Ahoy mates, I'm Zolonius. Welcome to my den. So, you wanna know how the bullshit system works, eh? Fret not, for in this quick guide I'll tell everything you will need. First, the dice. It's a d20 that we will be rolling whenever a character does something that they can fail or have consequences. Every roll is confrontational, as in the GM will make a counter roll to every PC roll, no matter the action. You can interpret this as a dynamic difficulty rating if you wish. Once both parties rolled, the results are compared, and the higher one obviously winning the confrontation. However, it doesn't end there. The degree of success is also measured, namely in critical points CPs, which are acquired by dividing the higher roll result with the lower one and rounding down the number this gives. For example, if Jim wanted to hit Bob in the head and they rolled 12 and 5 respectively, Jim would win with 12 per 5 equals 2.4 rounded down to 2 whole CPs. These CPs can be used to buy various effects provided by various sources, such as stunning the enemy via stick, damaging them with a blade, or making them stuck in spiderweb. These effects are called functions, and they are listed alongside their CP cost on the item, terrain feature, or any other source that provides them. Whilst it is possible to use functions other than the ones listed on the sources, the players using them needs to explain how they actually achieve the effect, and it also costs an additional CP. Would be weird to do life leech with an ordinary strict now, wouldn't it? A list for all possible functions can be found at the list of functions in the rulebook. Next is modifiers. Roll modifiers are what is on the tin. Positive or negative numbers that change the result of your roll. There are 4 sources of roll modifiers, namely traits, attributes, equipment, and advantages plus disadvantages. Traits are the building blocks of your character. They provide various bonuses to you and penalties to the enemy, depending on level, basic, advanced, and master, and tier, fundamental, categorical, and special. Higher tier traits give bigger bonuses per level, but for narrower set of actions, whilst lower tier traits have a broad usage, but lower impact. They both provide a point in relevant attribute as well, each level. Let's say, for example, that Jim, who hit Bob, has master level in melee knowledge, granting him the ability to use any melee weapons function up to 2 CP, and also gave him a total +3 roll bonus, raising his roll result from 12 to 15, earning him an extra CP, since 15 per 5 equals 3. Traits can be also defensive in nature, giving the enemy penalties instead of bonuses to the user. There is a list of traits in the rulebook, however the list is not complete, and just serves as a benchmark on how to create custom traits. Always ask your GM if your funny idea can be implemented into the game, since most times it can. Attributes are the raw capabilities of the character in 4 very broad categories, namely physical, sensual, mental, and social. Physical is for the character's strength, speed, constitution, and stamina. Sensual is for their dexterity, reaction time, accuracy, and perception. Mental is for intelligence, willpower, knowledge, and magical capabilities, while social is for charisma, morale, empathy, and people skills. They both act as positive modifiers to your own rolls, and quasi-health as well, given that damage the character takes are represented as temporal, moderate, or permanent debuffs to any attribute. Temporal damage stays until a successful resting roll. Character eats, drinks, sleeps for at least an hour. Moderate damage stays until it's stabilized by a medic, and after a week. And permanent damage stays semi-forever. There are ways to restore still. Need to be stabilized by a medic, lest they start spawning moderate damages per turn, and will be able to be reopened until a month passes. If any of the attributes reaches -3, the character will be out of action until it's raised above this threshold. Temporal damage on out-of-action characters can be healed via making them rest for a bit by others making them a bed or something, whilst moderate damage will need proper medic and a time. Sadly, permanent damage tends to kill characters, so TLDR, don't get hurt, is bad for you. Let's say that Jim, alongside his melee traits, also possesses 5 points in physical, raising his previous result of 15 to 20, gaining yet another CP, since 20 per 5 is 4. Equipment is whatever items the characters have on their person or close proximity. Everything that isn't another being can be used as items, from swords and sticks to immaterial stuff like martial art techniques and collections of fire insults. As long as it's useful for something, it's an item. There is two categories of items, namely offensive gear that gives bonuses to on rolls and defensive gear giving penalties to the opponent. Items also have usages, stating in what circumstances they are effective at. Weapons and armor usually state what damage types they deal or have resistance against, whilst ordinary equipment names the action it can be used for, like resting or cooking. Some items may use munitions, which means they deplete the charges of other items or may even have charges themselves. These charges-bound items consume one charge per use and will lose functionality when this value hits 0. Recharging is possible by finding, buying, or making similar items. Items also possess functions, which are the effects that can be bought via CP as discussed before. These functions have a name, a CP cost, and a blurb about what it does. Let's say that Jim had a baseball bat to whack Bob with, gaining a +5 roll bonus in blunt force trauma. But Bob also came equipped, namely with a bucket on his head, that is resistant to blunt damage, and thus reduces the roll bonus from this source by 3. So Jim only gets +2 to his roll, not gaining any CP, as 22 per 5 equals 4.4 rounded down to 4, same as before. The last modifier category is advantages and disadvantages, which are dependent on terrain, events, and own and opponent actions, and many other sources. Advantages are positive modifiers gained from good positioning, favorable weather, preparation, or whatever else that makes sense raising your roll. Whilst disadvantages are negative modifiers, usually from the exact opposite factors that warrant advantages, like tragedy in mud or losing part of your sight, for example. Both advantages and disadvantages modify rolls by 3, so if you here you get 2 advantages from attacking the enemy from multiple angles, that means you get a extra +6 to your roll. Since G attacked Bob with a stick that is of melee range, and Bob parried it with his head that is close range, Jim gets a single advantage worth of +3, raising his result from 22 to 25, thus gaining yet another CP in this round of head whacking, since 25 per 5 is 5. If his stick has a 2 CP stun function, he could stun Bob for 2 turns and maybe do a temporary damage to his physical attribute as well with his remaining CP. However, he needs to spend all these CPs no matter what, as they are non-transferable between turns, lest an item in possession lets them do so for a cost. A list of common advantages and disadvantages can be found in the rulebook, but once again, it's incomplete and serves only as an example. In summary, the roll modification formula looks like this. Roll d20 plus own trait bonuses, relevant attribute value, own equipment bonus, and gained advantages, minus enemy trait penalties, enemy equipment penalty, and gate disadvantages. Before you start to worry about how much stuff you have to keep in mind, I kindly reaffirm you that you don't. Once these modifiers are calculated for the first time, for example during character creation, you can just copy and paste them onto your macros tab in the character sheet and remember it from there. Negative modifiers, such as the enemy gear or disadvantages, will be declared by the GM at the start of each turn, so the player only needs to type like 3, 4 more characters at the end of their macros. Most stuff will only be done by just attributes anyway, so characters usually don't have more than 3 macros at a time. Not much to remember. Now is it? Lastly, let's talk about group mechanics and narrative modifiers. The Vial gang of the PCs will be considered a group, aka a single entity from the perspective of the GM, meaning they can pull together their roll results and decide together whose functions to buy from the resulting CPs. NPCs do the same, however they only get a single dice per entity, so a group of 3 NPCs will be significantly weaker than 3 PCs, as the former only rolls with 1d20, while the latter has 3d20, meaning a potential difference between 2 and 40, which is a very significant difference in early game and mid game. So don't fear larger groups, even if they are better equipped than you. Narrative modifiers are things that the players, or the GM, can do to change the course of the actions taken. For this, there are 2 tools at disposal, luck and bullshit points. Luck is the easiest of the two, which allows the user to redo their last roll 1 point for each reroll. This can be gained via traits, which regenerate, or events, which don't. Bullshit points, on the other hand, are a bit more complex though, since they allow the user to make a narrative declaration. That can be anything as long as it's not affecting directly a major NPC, like bosses, and is hilarious enough to make the GM chuckle. The usage of a bullshit point also warrants a challenge roll or a sacrifice of any kind, the choice of which is up to the GM. These are mainly done to escape from sticky situations in a comedic manner, like how Bob could spend a bullshit point to avoid getting hit via shitting himself up to orbit, then landing a safe distance away. This would inflict diarrhea on Bob, which is a moderate physical damage that will need to be treated later. These bullshit points can be gained by natural 18 plus rolls, and the bot on the server will notify you when one is gained, so keep track of them for our amusement. That's it, folks. There are more mechanics in the game, but those are either optional or only need to be explained when encountered in the game. So, for now, the lecture is over. Thank you for listening, and take care.